Hey, this dog represents my dad. And today I want to tell you a little bit about why that is. Hi, I'm Jen Anderson, and it is my mission to help working Christian moms have less chaos and less stress and have so much more joy and peace in all areas of their lives, including their work, their Christian, and their mom roles. Ladies, sometimes in life we can be handed some pretty tough stuff. And in those moments, we can grow and we can learn and we can be strengthened. And so let me tell you a little bit more about this funny little green dog here. So this dog is made from a sweater that belonged to my father. And roughly 30 years ago, my dad, at the age of 37, and I was 14, my dad committed suicide. He had a tough life. He was in and out of juvenile hall, spent time in and out of jail doing stupid things, mostly for being drunk and disorderly. He was my mom's love, and my parents fell in love, and when they were invited to leave the state and head back east, so my parents were from the San Francisco Bay Area, they basically left town because the local sheriff said to my mom, "It's time for you to get out of town. I can't handle all your shenanigans." My parents started hitchhiking and worked their way across the United States and ended up in New England because my mom had a friend who was there. And along the way, I was conceived. I often say I have gypsy in my soul because my parents conceived me while on the go. Anyhow, eventually my parents got married. I have a younger brother who's 2 years younger than me, and stuff was tough for my parents. There was a lot of drugs and alcohol and just kind of a crazy blue-collar hippie life. And eventually they did make it back to the San Francisco Bay Area. That's where I grew up. And so I grew up there all through elementary, junior high, high school, college, all of that. And my life from like the standards of the world was normal from the perspective that I had a house. I had food on the table. I had access to education. I went to ballet classes. My brother was involved in like soccer and football. I got decent grades, did well enough to get into college, and graduated college, and then moved on to have corporate positions and then own my own company. And so, but in that moment in April of 1989, when my dad decided to take his life, it's a pivotal moment for me because one of my parents opted out of parenting on this earth. And I remember being in high school as a freshman and not wanting to be that kid whose dad committed suicide. I wanted to just be normal. I wanted to wear the Swatch. I wanted to have the Esprit clothes and the Guess jeans and wear the Vans or the Converse. I wanted to get decent grades. I wanted to be smart. I wanted to be liked. I wanted boys to notice me. I wanted my bangs to look just right. That was back in the time when we had the big hair. Remember the big claw bangs and stuff? That's what I wanted. I didn't want to be that kid whose dad committed suicide, but I was. And I didn't really talk about it. And I remember talking to my high school counselor. He called me in and asked how I was doing, and I said I'm fine. I just didn't want to talk to him. He was this old guy. Old enough that when I graduated high school 3 years later, he retired with our class. So he was in the end of his career, and I felt so disconnected from him. I mean, he was like this grandpa aged person, and here I was this 14-year-old who just lost her father. And over time, the pain reduced. The holidays weren't so bad. But it was always this dull ache in my heart of my dad opting out of being a dad. In doing so, other men did step up. I had a great uncle who really tried to do his best for me and my brother to be a father-like figure. But it didn't necessarily, replace my father. And I'm not saying that I had this like nirvana relationship with my dad and that he was this most amazing person, because really he wasn't. He was unavailable. He was stoned or drunk half the time. And but he was still my dad. And he still taught me how to color and to draw. And he cheered me on in my ballet. I did ballet for 10 years growing up. And he would help out with stuff, as did my mom. And he coached some of my brother's soccer, did referee for my dad, or for my brother's soccer stuff. And so my dad he was around, even through his addictions. He was still somewhat around, but he was still my dad, right? Kind of doesn't matter like how bad they are. They're still your dad, or they're still your mom. And when they're not there, the things that are crappy about them, they start to lessen in your minds. And the things that were awesome about them start to blossom and grow in your mind. And so, last year, one of my friends on Facebook had posted a picture of a teddy bear that was made from some fabric from her, I think it was her father's dress shirt. It was either her father or her grandfather. Pretty sure it was her father, but her father had died. And so she had Laurie Salisbury make the shirt into a couple of stuffed animal bears. I think they were smaller than this one. And so Kim had posted a picture of this on Facebook. And, oh boy, I should have grabbed a tissue. And when I saw, and she was talking on Facebook about how it was this wonderful tribute to this wonderful man, and she had her daughter holding the little bear, and her daughter's a teenager, and so just how much this man had meant to her, now that they were going to have a stuffed animal to represent him. And when I saw it, I instantly knew that I wanted to have a green sweater converted into a stuffed animal of sorts. So I reached out to Laurie and told her to have this green sweater, and is there anything she could do? And she helped to make it into a dog. And I chose a dog because my dad always had dogs. We grew up in a family that had a dog, usually like a lab or like a hound dog lab mix. That was usually the type of dogs that we had. But when I think of my dad and I think of an animal, I think of my dad, or think of a dog when I think of my dad. And so anyhow, so here's this goofy little green, very floppy stuffed animal. And now, instead of having that sweater tucked away in a hope chest, in fact, it still smells like the cedar hope chest, I have this dog that reminds me of James Thomas Sanford, my dad. The man for whom I owe a lot of great things in my life. And that was 30 years ago when he died. And so here I am, this 45-year-old woman who is married, has a child. I have bonus kids. As I call my stepkids, I call my bonus kids. I'm running a business, have been for a decade, and traveled the world, and I've done remarkable things. And I've had a lot of people say thank you to me over the years for helping them to improve their careers or to uplift them and inspire them. And who I want to hear from the most is my dad. I want him to collect me into his arms. And to tell me that he loves me and that he's proud of me. I'm just grateful for my knowledge that I will be able to see my dad again in heaven. And that we'll be able to sit down and have a conversation and talk through what was going on for my father. Because I was a self-centered 14-year-old. I didn't know how bad things were for him. I also didn't know that he had tried to commit suicide before that as well. My poor mom. She went through a lot. And I look forward to having a conversation with my dad one day. And the reality is that, yeah, it sucks to not have my dad here on earth today, but I do have other good men who are like amazing uncles or older brothers who were my family by choice and make a big difference in my life. And the reason why I wanted to share all of that with you today is because I encourage you to recognize who are those good people in your life who love you and who are supporting you, that are making a difference. My dad did make a difference in my life when he was on the earth, and angelically I do feel my father as well. And who are the people that are in your life that are making a difference, and how can you express gratitude to them and to love them? And if there's anybody in your life who you feel might be suicidal, who might be struggling, who's had a rough patch, or seemingly seems to be happy all the time and then all of a sudden changes really quickly, I'd like to invite you to reach out to them and to check in with them, and like really check in with them, not just a quick text like, how you doing, right? Like maybe start with that, but progress from there and really check in with them and see how they're doing and make that effort. Because I'll tell you what, losing somebody to suicide just plain sucks. It is hard. It is really hard to be a surviving family member of that. And it was 30 years ago, and it still affects me. It doesn't crush me. It doesn't bring me to my knees in complete, absolute, just fear and horror and pain. It doesn't do that. But it still affects me. And now I have a kid of my own. She's almost 4 years old, and I would love to see her color with her Grandpa Tom. I would love to have that. And I don't get to have that memory because my dad opted instead to take his life. And there are going to be a lot of other things and experiences that are going to happen in our family that my dad's not going to be here. At least I'm not going to see him, right? Like I anticipate he's watching or is around or whatever angelically, but he's not here. I can't see him. So that's why I created this goofy little green dog, because it reminds me a little bit of my dad. And every time I see it over on the shelf, it's like, hey Dad, how are you today? I'm glad you could be here. And if you have lost somebody to suicide, or just a family member who's died, this is such a cool thing to do. It's a really lovely way to have a way to remember them. Pick that favorite shirt or something and have something made. From this, there was actually some extra fabric left over, so I had some little hearts made, and I've been giving them to my cousins, and like, because my dad had 2 sisters, so to his sisters and their kids, and then to my mom and my brother, just as a little token and a reminder of my dad. And so you might want to look at doing something like that for yourself, so that it can just be like a little thing to remind people of somebody who is super special in your life. And seriously though, if you were ever prompted to reach out to somebody who you think might be in a lot of pain or concern, or you just don't know why, but you're feeling prompted to reach out to them, especially if it's a 3 o'clock in the morning moment, do what you need to do to reach out to that person and connect with them and make a difference in their life just by simply saying, hey, I'm worried about you. What's going on? And be honest and vulnerable with them. It may very well be one of the best things that you can do to make a difference, to help somebody turn that corner and come away from those suicidal thoughts. I hope that this video has been helpful for somebody somewhere. It's cathartic for me to have this done and, you know, to have a little bit of my dad here, and it makes a difference. But what's more important is that I feel like I need to be open and to share how painful it is to lose a family member to suicide, and also to be open about how even 3 decades later, it still is hurtful, but it doesn't rule your life. It doesn't have to rule your life. And you can hand that pain over to Christ, and through the atonement, let him take that pain away and at least deaden that pain a little bit, reduce it. It is possible, my friends. It is so very, very possible. And it's important that we do these things and that we turn our heart over and just let God help us, because it will make a huge, huge difference, because there's so much good that working Christian moms that we can do in our lives. And I don't want my dad's choice of opting out of life to ruin everything that I'm doing in my work, or to make me feel like that God has left me or something, or to not be a good mom. If anything, what my dad did still to this day reminds me that there are people who are hurting out there, and it helps me to have more compassion for people. And so I've been looking for, and I have been living in that space of recognizing the silver lining in the cloud, and yet it's still painful. It's still tough. It is still so very, very tough. Thank you for letting me share this. Thank you for all that you are doing, ladies, to do what you can to connect with God and to make a difference in your circles, inside your work circles, your church circles, and your home circles. I love you, and I'm cheering you on. And if this video resonates with you and somebody you want to share it with, please share it with them, because if it can make a difference for somebody else, then all my tears and my streaked mascara will be worth it. Take care, my friends, and remember always that God has a message for you. Thanks. I'll see you next time.